Welcome, everyone, to today's conversation about smart practices in diversity, equity, and inclusion in our series of video conversations called Smart Inclusion. And today we are talking about why neurodiversity is the #1 competitive advantage that businesses should be investing in this year. And it is my great pleasure to introduce Jeff Miller, who is the CEO and founder of Potentia Workforce, which is a consulting firm that delivers technology, analytics, and human capital services by leveraging the talents of and providing opportunities for a highly skilled yet often overlooked workforce of neurodiverse individuals. So prior to founding Potentia, Jeff was president of a global workforce services firm and has a very impressive track record of success in consulting and business growth strategies. And prior to founding, what happened was your son, Jeff, was diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And this set Jeff upon a very deep and personal exploration into neurodiversity and set him upon a mission to bring innovation to businesses through best practices and inclusion of neurodiverse talent. So thank you so much for joining me today, Jeff. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, Sylvia. Thanks for having me.
And everybody's first question is, so what exactly is neurodiversity?
Sure, absolutely. So neurodiversity is a set of neurological and cognitive differences that it's a fancy way of saying basically the way different brains work, right? So neurodiversity, which makes up about 25% of the population, a lot of people are really surprised by that statistic, are individuals who we like to say, are just walking around with a different operating system, right? So it may have certain strengths, it often does, may have some areas of challenge. But they're not better or worse. They're just different. They include things like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and PTSD, actually, among others. So it's a big group. Neurodiversity also refers to a movement, which is the movement of generating inclusion for people who think differently, and as a result may have some challenges in the workplace, but also have terrific strengths if they can just be supported in really basic ways. And that's what Potentia's mission is really all about.
Wow, 25% of the population has some type of neurodiverse or cognitive differentiator. That I could see where that would be a little challenging, like when conducting interviews, like why some people interview better than others, perhaps, right?
That's a big one. Yeah, the interview process is a big reason why 25% was when I started on this journey, as you pointed out, because of my son, just as a dad, to really understand more about neurodiversity and how I could support him. The 25% was the first number that really surprised me. The second number was, let's say you're autistic. And you graduate from a 4-year university. You graduate from University of Texas or University of Colorado, and you have a nice GPA, probably a good deal better than mine. You're still looking at an unemployment rate of around 80 to 85%, which is just unbelievable in today's market that could be the case. So
that is really a shocking number.
Yeah, it's 25% of the population. It's 80% unemployment in certain aspects of it. Others are a bit lower.
Or underemployed. Yeah.
Or underemployed. And then the third thing that sort of really made me launch Potentia is that when we started, about 1% of the Fortune 500 was doing anything around neurodiversity. So it's a relatively recent, while it's been around forever, I want to point that out. Neurodiversity has been around forever. The phrase was actually coined in 1998, and so it's a relatively recent movement and understanding that we've come to about these individuals, this community, and how really talented and, as you pointed out, often overlooked they are.
Right, because they communicate differently, right? Like the
in
communication style.
In some cases, but they may process information differently. They may see the world differently, and they certainly may communicate differently. So, as you were mentioning in an interview, right, that could be particularly challenging. Just one example: panel interviews are particularly tough for neurodistinct individuals. It's just something that we've learned over time. I think a lot of people have struggled with panel interviews, but they're particularly tough for individuals who are neurodistinct. So, how do you create an environment that doesn't eliminate 25% of the population from your candidate pool, but have a process that's predictive and can help ultimately to get the best employees in the right seats, which is everybody's goal.
Right. So why do you feel that neurodiversity will be delivering a more competitive advantage for business?
Well, the first thing, and it's in the numbers, right, is if it's 25% of the population, then number one, companies that have inclusive processes that allow them to tap that population are at a competitive advantage versus the ones that don't, right? That's just self-evident, right? The second thing is the nature of the candidates we're talking about. One of the stats that surprises a lot of people is your average neurodiversity program has 96% retention.
Wow.
So these days, when you talk about the Great Resignation and you talk about individuals, jumping from jobs, especially in the millennial and Gen Z strata, having individuals that want to stay with your organization is huge. And that's not to say that people who are neurodiverse don't turn over. Of course they do. But if they're in a good supportive environment, generally speaking, these are individuals that, number one, don't want to go across the street for an arbitrary reason, right? A second stat that goes along with that is productivity. So when you get candidates in the right roles, neurodiverse candidates are about 45% more productive than candidates of similar background and experience. So you've got candidates who are more productive, higher retention. Again, a lot of these folks really make ideal employees in a lot of ways, but because of the way processes work, a lot of times they don't get a shot. They may not even apply to the job based on how it's written, or struggle with the interview or the onboarding if they make it that far.
Wow. Well, those are some very impressive numbers, Jeff. So what can businesses do to better recruit then and provide that supportive environment to create that level of retention for the neurodiverse workers?
That's a great question. And I think the goal that you have when you're looking at neurodiversity and all of the intersectionality that exists there is you certainly want to have inclusive interviewing, right? You also want to acknowledge that if this is 25% of the population, companies of any size are going to have current neurodistinct employees who may not disclose, who are currently working at the organization. And if they don't feel like they can bring their whole selves to work, you would logically assume that they're not going to be as productive or as engaged as they might otherwise be. And then there's the employees as a whole, right? If you have inclusive programs, the idea would be that they would benefit, your employees as a whole. So there's really a range of goals that I would say, companies want to think about first when they think about neurodiversity and how it can be a real force multiplier for the entire population. Including, by the way, other focus groups. So if you're trying to hire more veterans, for example, well, that group is at least 25% neurodiverse. So, having a good neurodiversity program should carry forward in a lot of other ways. So I think those are the goals that you want to frame up when you're thinking about it as a business.
Interesting, right? Because if 25% of the population is some type of neurodiverse or cognitive difference, that would apply to whether you're recruiting, from a historically African-American college, going after women, people with mobility challenges, it's anyone. Any type of diverse community or outreach that you're doing, that 25% of them will be neurodiverse individuals.
That's right. Including employees that may be on the books today that
have
are
not disclosed.
that have
Yeah.
not disclosed and don't feel
Right.
comfortable disclosing. Right.
Yeah.
So I think you want to frame it, in terms of those groups, but really your whole workforce and your whole workforce strategy in terms of the things that companies can do, and these are fortunately some of the things that we actually help companies do. I think number one would be investing in some training for your managers in particular around what neurodiversity is and what it isn't. We find that a lot of people have misconceptions. A lot of people don't know a lot about neurodiversity if they haven't had a personal experience like the one that I talked about. But probably more dangerous is the people that have had a little bit of exposure and feel like they know. They might have, for example, a nephew that's profoundly affected by autism, right? That's real. The person might be nonverbal. They might have, a whole host of challenges, or, and again, I'm sure some strengths, and I'm sure, but, they might think that that's what autism is and that's what neurodiversity is, right? When the reality is that it's an incredibly, we're a majority neurodiverse organization ourselves. And I can tell you the diversity within our neurodiverse individuals is massive, right? For me to try to manage individuals the same way because they're neurodiverse would be a bad idea. Because
right. Well, that's a great point, because it's a bad idea to treat any ethnicity or gender or group of people as one big monolithic block, right? You're all individuals with different pieces of you, right?
That's
that
right.
make up your individuality. So that's fascinating, though, because that 25% number is just sticking with me now, because any type of diversity outreach really has to include some type of accommodation for the neurodiverse individuals just within that group that you're trying to recruit.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah, and we try to reframe the accommodation conversation a little bit, right? In the terms that we were just talking about, right? There should really be a social contract between the managers and their teams that managers are going to try and create an environment for each individual, right? That where they can be as happy and as productive as possible.
Right, and come to work and do their best work every day. Right.
That's different for different people, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of our training goes into those types of things, which again apply to everybody, right? Mm-hmm. But it's the old idea of, well, do I treat everybody the same? No, you treat everybody fairly, but you don't treat everybody the same, because the needs and motivations of individuals are going to be very different. Well, by the way, whether they're neurodistinct or not. So I think investing in some training is what I would say. Number one, get some education on this from organizations like ours that are ND led, so you can hear directly from individuals who are neurodiverse. Most of our training, vast majority of our training and workshops, are led by individuals who are neurodistinct themselves, so they can give that first person account, which again doesn't speak for everybody, but it gives a really valuable idea, for someone to be able to speak about their lived experience.
Right, and share their journey so that other people can find their path.
That's right. So I think you do that. What we encourage people to do is look at where you may have pain points around talent, and then start a hiring pilot. Be intentional about hiring some individuals who are neurodiverse in particular roles that may be challenging for you to fill or keep filled. And what?
Well, theoretically, 25% of your applicant pool is going to fit that.
Right, but building a way to receive that population that allows them to compete fairly for the jobs,
and even just feel comfortable disclosing. Right. As you said, right. like come with their whole natural selves. Right.
That's right. That's right.
Then have to be.
But we encourage people to do a hiring program, and do a small one, do a small pilot, but start and do it in a way that's tangible. And the reason we encourage a small pilot is because every company is going to implement this a little differently, and that's a good thing. Right, because every company is coming from a little bit different place. They may have some best practices that already would work really well for the neurodiverse community. We don't need to change a thing there, but in other areas we might suggest a tweak or two. But doing that and having something like that, and then assessing it, improving it, measuring it, and then celebrating it, right, is a tangible thing that you can do that will allow those individuals who have been, closeted in terms of disclosure to start to feel comfortable to share. When they see tangible, every implementation we do of a hiring program at Potentia is different. But one of the commonalities every time we do one is the number of people who come forward who are current employees who've never disclosed before and now want to disclose and want to be part of this program. Oftentimes mentoring the new hires that we're bringing in because they didn't have that when they were
right.
When they
right.
were in,
That's excellent.
Right? So it's that tangible effort that a company takes and says, hey, look, this is important to us. We've got an executive sponsor. We've got, right. Those are the things that not only allow you to create the best environment for these new hires coming in, but encourage your other employees to step forward if they choose to, right? It's still their choice. Mm-hmm. But we feel like the more folks feel comfortable bringing their full selves to work, you're going to get a more engaged, more productive employee.
That leads to that productivity that you were talking about. Well, that's great. I love the idea of a pilot program, right, where you can take a baby step and reap some pretty significant results right out of the gate. It sounds like through training and just commitment, right, like showing the commitment. Is there anything else that you'd like employers to know about the people who, quote unquote, think differently and can contribute to building that more diverse workplace, as well as contributing to the organization's bottom line?
Absolutely. I would say a couple of things. These are conditions that were diagnosed medically. They're part of what we call a medical model. And so it's understandable that, what does medicine do? Medicine seeks to treat and to fix, right? But the individuals that are part of our community don't want to be fixed, right? For someone, I've had this explained to me that for someone who's autistic, they look at it as central to them as, the fact that they're female or that they're, left-handed or have blue eyes, right? It's part of who they are. And so, those are things that we need to negotiate and understand that, the medical model is about, while it's about helping somebody, it also emphasizes the deficits and the areas of difference as negatives. And what we need to do from a business perspective is look at the strengths, right? Look at the strengths of the individuals, what they're capable of. Because in a lot of cases, what I've learned is that it outpaces their peers. The hyper focus, the ability to stay on task makes for some really impressive and innovative employees and results, right? So I think, we always focus on that strength first model. The medical model has been so inbred in all of us for so long that it's really easy to see difference as less than, and we need to flip that script.
Interesting. I could definitely see that, like with people that have maybe treatable medical condition like depression, right? Mm-hmm. This is not that, right? You're not like born depressed, right?
Right. But
very, very interesting.
Yeah, for a lot of our folks, like I said, it's part of their identity, and it's just for all of our community. It's part of their identity. It's part of who they are, right? And so and
as you said, we need to find ways to don't treat everybody the same, but treat everybody fair, treat everybody fairly. That's my big takeaway.
Yep.
For today, Jeff.
And then I think ERG groups are great, but it's important that people engage with individuals who are neurodiverse as they start to come forward, as you start to do these things, right? And that's what true inclusion is, right? It's people having a seat at the table when decisions are made, right? It's not after the decision's made that you then communicate it. It's actually having people have a seat at the table. And have
They've added the B, right? Belonging. Mm-hmm. DEIB.
That's right.
It's not enough to include. They have to belong. People have to belong. And that's just human nature, right? All of us want that, right? We want to belong in our families and our communities and our workplaces.
Well said.
Well, thank you again for joining me, Jeff. This has been a very fascinating conversation, and I'm very grateful for you sharing your perspective. with the HR community and the recruiting community of our audience. As you know, Smart Search, we develop technology platforms to support diversity in recruiting. And we've been talking with our clients and vendor partners and thought leaders and industry advocates like yourself about these trends and challenges and solutions on how employers can create this more diverse and inclusive workplace. And I think neurodiversity, as you pointed out, it really can deliver a competitive advantage in terms of retention and productivity, and in really incorporating the full spectrum of humanity into our lives. So I do believe it's time for employers to think differently about a very remarkable and often underemployed community of neurodiverse people and what they have to offer in the workplace and in our society.
Well, and I just want to commend you and Smart Search for this initiative and what you're doing, and just appreciate the opportunity to speak about our life's mission here at Potentia.
Thank you so much. Enjoy your day.
You too.